Dear committee, dear audience, I will introduce the topic of my PhD studies, which is investigating the role of probiotics in shaping the human gut microbiome. As mentioned, my name is Júlia Éliás, and I'm graduated, in fact, as a dietitian and work currently at the Faculty of Health Sciences. My aim is to formulate evidence-based and applicable recommendation for the use of probiotics in health and disease, which will be an important step towards the development of personalized medicine. Therefore, my mission is to understand the exact role of the human gut microbiota in health and disease and the consequences of different interventions and treatments on the gut microbiome at all. I have two projects, or I had two projects during these 2 years. Both of them are investigating the effect of probiotics on the gut microbiota. In the first topic, we investigated the effect during antibiotic therapy, and in the second project, we investigated this effect in the healthy population. So the title of my first project is Probiotic Supplementation during antibiotic treatment is unjustified in maintaining the gut microbiome diversity. Probiotic dietary supplements represent a $1 billion market, which is still expected to be growing. Probiotics are widely used in several conditions. However, patients who are treated with antibiotics receive 9 times more likely probiotic supplementation. We know that antibiotics have a major impact on the gut microbiota and is among the key factors leading to the so-called low diversity dysbiosis. And probiotics are widely used to prevent this dysbiotic state. However, we don't know the exact effect and the exact outcome regarding these supplementations on the gut microbiota on this post-antibiotic dysbiosis. And actually, there is a knowledge gap in the guidelines as well, since they don't really investigate this aspect of this probiotic supplementation. Therefore, our aim was to investigate this effect, summarizing the results of randomized controlled trials. We performed or formulated our clinical question according to the PICO framework, where our investigated population were patients treated with antibiotics, with the intervention of probiotics, or as a control, no probiotics, and our outcome of interest was the gut microbial diversity and composition. Here you can see the flow chart of the systematic search and selection process. We screened nearly 12,000 articles, but at the end we were able only to include 15 studies in the systematic review and 5 of them in the meta-analysis. Comparing the so-called Shannon diversity index, which is one of the diversity indices that are used to describe microbiome diversity, we could not observe any significant effect of probiotics, as we did not detect any difference between the intervention and control groups as measured immediately after the antibiotic therapy, as you can see on the first figure. And on the second figure, you can see that we performed an additional sensitivity analysis comparing the change values between the before-after values in each study, which again did not show us any significant difference between the intervention and control groups. We performed the same calculations and the sensitivity analysis for another diversity index, which was the so-called KO1 diversity index, and we got the same results with no significant difference between the two groups. And for the third diversity index that we investigated, we get again the same result, that probiotics did not have any significant effect on the gut microbiome diversity during antibiotic therapy. So in conclusion, we can say that the meta-analysis of these 3 diversity indices did not show any significant effect of probiotics during the antibiotic treatment, and I couldn't include in this presentation due to the short time, but changes in the taxonomic composition tend to be also similar regardless of probiotic supplementation. It varied, however, between the different studies. And there is also a tendency of restoration in 3 to 8 weeks in both groups, again, regardless of the probiotic supplementation, which actually challenges the question these benefits of using probiotics during the antibiotic treatment. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first meta-analysis and the most comprehensive review in the topic so far, and it represents the highest level of evidence since we included only randomized controlled trials and used high-quality methods. Of course, we have some limitations as well due to the low number of studies and low sample sizes, and we could not include much of the data in the quantitative synthesis due to insufficient and mostly qualitative data reporting. But I can say that the other studies that could not be quantitatively analyzed showed us the same tendency that actually all the studies that were not included in the meta-analysis said that there were no significant difference between the intervention and control groups, and maybe that's why they did not report these results. And factors such as including different type of probiotics, different type and dose of antibiotics, and also including patients with different health conditions have to keep in mind when interpreting the results. As an implication for practice, we can say that probiotics are unjustified in maintaining the diversity of gut microbiome, and these products tend to have only a very limited and temporary effect in general. And as an implication for research, there is a huge need for more high-quality randomized controlled trials, and there is also a need for standard units of measurements of diversity indices and standard ways to examine the microbial composition, and we also need clear cutoff values for the ideal values of these microbiome diversity indices, and for that also the evaluation of correlation between the clinical manifestations and microbial composition would be crucial. I am glad to announce that our paper has just been accepted in a very prestigious journal in BMC Medicine on Monday. Thank you. Thank you very much. And the second project, investigating the effect of probiotic supplementation on gut microbiome diversity and composition in the healthy population. As I mentioned earlier, probiotic dietary supplement is a $1 billion market. And it is important to see that these products are in part marketed even toward healthy individuals without any medical reason, just for prevention. And as a dietitian, I also face this question many times, that healthy people want to take probiotics just to improve their gut flora. But actually, this effect in the healthy population is not sufficiently summarized in the literature, and it is also not included in the current guidelines either. So we wanted to investigate this effect, summarizing again the results of randomized controlled trials. To answer our clinical question, we investigated the general healthy population, either taking probiotics or not, and the investigated outcome were again the gut microbial composition and diversity. We screened more than 7,000 articles, and we could include 86 studies in the systematic review and 19 of them in the meta-analysis. Showing again first the results of Shannon Diversity Index, we could not observe any effect of probiotics on the gut flora in the healthy population, and we did not observe any difference between the interventional and control groups. The same tendency was observed again investigating the other index, this observed O2 diversity index. And again, the same observations were made investigating the Simpson and KO1 diversity indices, so we could not observe any significant effect on either indices. Since the systematic review part of the study is still ongoing, investigating the taxonomic composition, I have a preliminary conclusion regarding the diversity indices and the meta-analysis, which is again that probiotics did not show any significant effect of probiotics on the gut microbiome in the healthy population. Here is the progress of the second project. So we are working on the systematic review and the baseline characteristics table right now, and in the meanwhile, we are also working on the risk of bias assessment. So summarizing our achievements during these 2 years, we have an accepted article, and the second one is planned to submit in August. And just a couple of words regarding my additional activities. I have 3 active TDK students, and I am very proud that 2 of them won the second place in the OTDK conference this year. I myself also attended several conferences, but maybe I would like to highlight that I won the first prize in the health sciences section at the PhD scientific days last year. And I work also as a lecturer at the Department of Nursing, and I teach the subject final thesis, both in English and Hungarian languages. I'm also an electoral representative of the Doctoral School of Health Sciences in the Doctoral Student Association, and I was very honored to be accepted into the Kárpát-Fronius Ödön program this year. And last but not least, I'm happy that I won a STIA Young Researchers Grant at Semmelweis University, which I will spend on a study visit at the Imperial College in London next year. I will start my work there from October for about 6 months. And thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
May I ask you something? That's true that with probiotic it's not possible to change so much our microbiome. However, during antibiotic treatment, it's necessary to give probiotic preventing from antibiotic-associated diarrhea. So that's really important. And there is not probiotic, but we have to give the exact strain which probiotic you use. And that is really important. And we have only a few probiotic which really very effective in preventing antibiotic-associated diarrhea. May I ask you that in your meta-analysis, you looked for specified probiotic in restoration of the microflora or not?
No, we did not. We wanted to make subgroup analysis, but since we had very limited number of studies, we were not able. But we intended to make subgroups according to the different strains. And I agree that there is an important aspect of, regarding the antibiotic-associated diarrhea. And actually, that's why I also mentioned that it would be important to correlate these data with diversity or composition and the outcome of diarrhea. And one thing that I also would like to mention that in the guidelines, indeed, there are specific strains recommended, but actually in the newest or the newest meta-analysis, I read that they actually recommend to make like a risk analysis to see identify patients at risk of antibiotic-associated diarrhea because they observed the difference between these outcomes. So those patients who are actually at risk, like elderly in the hospital, they definitely benefit
and
from probiotics. And
don't depend on the antibiotic also.
Yeah, yes, of course, but yes. It was not actually included in the guideline. But I think these results can be mostly applicable for the non-hospitalized patients. I mean, I don't know, bacterial infection in my lung or whatever, and I may not necessarily benefit from taking probiotics if I'm healthy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Question? Yeah.
I have a very basic question, but I'm really interested in. Basically, it's addressed to everyone in this profession. What is a healthy microbiome? Can you please tell me?
I would be very happy if I could answer this question. Yeah, basically, yeah. indeed, it's a very important aspect because we don't know. And that's why I also mentioned that we even don't have like optimal value of these diversity indices. We might just see that it decreases or not, but we don't have a healthy value, so to say. So I think this area is still under examination, and we know a lot, but still not enough. So we just keep doing these researches, and maybe one day we will know more.
So I think that would be a very good research project, because also there are a lot of hot topics like fecal matter transplant as well, but there is also a question, what would be the healthy one? May I? I'm really
in this topic is good as a pediatrician, because you have to know that we reach the adult type of microflora at about 3 years of age. And environmental factors, so healthy environmental factors will establish a better flora. And this depends on, because this stabilized at 3 years, so it's important breastfeeding, so that breastfeeding lasts for a prolonged time, or when to introduce and rightly the complementary food. So the feeding, dietitian has a really very important role in this. And to live, for instance, in a traditional rural environment, this is also really important among the animals. And, cesarean section is, of course, it's indicated as necessary, but it's in this respect is wrong. And especially we have to stress not to make cesarean section when it's not indicated, of course. That is important. And modern lifestyle for adult, it's a change in a very bad direction. For this, there are a lot of studies. For instance, obesity. Obesity is related to this. And for instance, in Africa, it was such examination that it was compared the result in Bissau, Guinea, and Venice, Italy. And it was highly striking distinction between the two countries. And in this respect, Bissau, Guinea is better than the European Union member state. So we know the composition of the healthy microflora containing what kind of lactobacilli, bifidobacteria, and so on. So I cannot tell you everything now about this, and we somehow should maintain, but probably not the probiotic supplementation is the best for in this respect, as you proved in your study, but the healthy lifestyle.
Yes, actually, I would recommend definitely the prebiotics, like different type of fibers or omega-3 fatty acids and things like that, which would promote our healthy bacteria. So, yes.
Congratulations, Anna, for your projects and for your acceptance of the article.
Thank you.
My question would be related to what you have just mentioned and to your first topic, that if you concluded that probiotics are unjustified for taking, if the individual is taking antibiotics. As a dietitian, what would be your advice? What can a patient do, like alimentary changes to maintain their gut microbiome, or can they reduce or increase a certain type of food intake or something?
That's a very good question. Thank you. Actually, I tried it one time with one of my colleagues, because she was under antibiotic therapy, and she asked me if she should take probiotics or not, and I advised her not to take, and try to eat actually foods that are containing a lot of prebiotical fibers. For example, inulin, like onion and things like that, for example. And actually she tried, and she was very happy with the results, because she didn't get any problem. Because before, in previous times when she took antibiotics. She had some problem with her stomach, and she tried this with not taking probiotics but focusing on prebiotics, and actually she did well. Okay, it was not a randomized control trial, so I don't want to draw conclusions from that, but actually I suggested it once, and actually it worked. So maybe that could be a good clinical trial in the future.
Okay, I would like to ask that you mentioned that you couldn't do any subgroup analysis based on the type of the probiotics. And even we saw that in the first project there was the summarized effect was not statistically significant, although there were some studies that was already a significant difference. And did you observe it why it was? What was the reason? They used some other kind of probiotics just like the others, or what was the reason?
Thank you for your question. It's a good point again, and we really tried to identify the reason behind it, but actually I could not define any concrete reason. Actually, we had only 2 studies, yes, that showed us significant results, and the only common thing was that the investigated patients were in both cases patients with Helicobacter pylori infection, but actually there were other studies that included patients with Helicobacter pylori infection, so I could not say that was the reason. And they used different strains and different antibiotics, so I could not find any common but still distinguishable thing that could declare these things. So I don't know.
Do you think that just diversity can affect the GI tract side effects of antibiotics?
No, I don't think so, actually. The reason why I showed these results because these diversity indices can be analyzed quantitatively in the form of a meta-analysis because the other taxonomic composition would be very hard to put in a forest plot. But I'm sure that the composition may play a crucial role in that. And yeah, I just mentioned it in one sentence because I didn't have the time, but we investigated the taxonomic composition as well. So like more so if there were maybe more of some type of bacteria in either cases, but we could not actually observe this during this antibiotic therapy and probiotic or not. So there were actually no difference between the groups. So the changes were the same, and I think it depended on the antibiotic type. So it could not prevent actually these changes.
Maybe the activity of the microbiome could affect, and it could be different. And can I ask one question, because I'm interested in natural antioxidant therapy, and you published an article regarding the xanthohumol.
Yes.
Why did you choose beer as a
beer?
Yes, instead of wine.
Yes,
red wine or white wine?
Red wine, yeah.
Yeah, the reason behind that actually that we worked with this xanthomol with my former supervisor, and this xanthomol is naturally found in hops, and that's why it is naturally found in beer as well, and that's why we worked with this.
Okay, thank you.
Well, meta-analysis tried to answer very strong questions, and actually it's a very strong tool. So, are we in the moment that we can say drop probiotics? Because that could be the consequence of your paper. Or we have to try to work more and trying to have better papers with a specific outcome and specific patients and specific probiotics or prebiotics that can lead us to a correct answer, probably.
Yes, I agree with that for sure we have to work further on this topic, because yes, actually there are strains that are quite promising in this respect. We have a really long limitation section in our paper, actually. So, of course, we tried to suggest that we need more paper, more standardization, and regarding also these diversity indices, because I only showed four I showed, but there are like 10. So, and they are differently used in the literature. And yeah, we really need to work on it, because there are very few papers, as you could see, at this quality as a randomized control trials. There are more observational studies and things like that, but yeah, we need quality paper for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any question? Okay. Yes?
Some statistical questions, maybe.
So you mentioned these diversity indices.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about, so how would you explain it to a clinician who is new to this topic, what a diversity index actually measures?
Yes, they are widely used in the ecological studies, so they come from there, where they use it, for example, for forests and things like that, but they are widely used regarding the gut microbiota as well. And yeah, I go back just to, yeah, so now I showed you these 4 diversity indices, for example. So let's start with the most obvious and the easiest. This is the number of observed operational taxonomic units, which is basically very similar to like number of observed species. Not really species, because it clusters these operational units regarding how similar are they to each other with sequencing, but I don't want to go to details, but this is the simplest. It's just a clear number. And then we have, for example, the Shannon and Simpson diversity. They also take into account the evenness of these, so the relative abundances of these species. So they also get higher, I mean, the value of the index when they are more even. So like not the case when, okay, I have lots of bacteria, but actually I have like 99% of one and just very, very few of the others.
So the values vary. So what's the scale? It goes from where to where?
Regarding Shannon, it goes from 0 to infinity. But for example, in Simpson, the maximum value is 1.
Okay.
So they use different calculations. Actually, Simpson weights more the taxa that are more represented, and that's why maybe Shannon is the mostly used. And for example, KO1 it's an estimation which takes into account those rare species that might be there, but we cannot really sequence them, or we just take them as, okay, it's an error or something in the sequencing. So KO1 is an estimation, basically.
And do you have like, it is a little bit related to my first question, like reference ranges for these values, or not yet?
Not really.
It's not established
regarding
yet.
Shannon, I read several suggestions, but it really differs. So sometimes they say that below 4 it is then low diversity, but another papers say that below 2.
So we don't really have the necessary evidence to establish a sale. And what would be your, so if you could choose the outcome to measure, and then those would be published in all the papers, which one would you recommend, or maybe some other one to measure it, or maybe more specific? So what would be your idea for a design? Actually,
I think I would measure Shannon. If we just speaking about the diversity indices, maybe mostly because this is the most widely used one yet. So you could see that I had lots of articles on those forest plots and few on the others.
Yes.
So I think I would use Shannon. But since we actually, once we have the sequencing data, we have the opportunity to just ask the program, give us all the numbers, and I think maybe that would be the best if we could use all, because none is like perfect.
Did you have articles who also published basic data, like individual data, so where this evaluation would be possible? Because when you have all this summary data, that also limits the evaluation possibilities.
I had the individual data only in one case, but so they published the diversity indices, not the sequencing data, but actually nowadays most of the studies are starting at least to upload the raw sequencing data in databases. So actually that would be the next step, to use those data to make a meta-analysis. It's a very huge project. Actually, we are thinking about with one of the first-year students already, but that would be a long-term goal.
So that could be made like a publication standard in this field, perhaps?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, one last remark, that it's always good to compare, for instance, different patient groups, and between the diversity between these two groups is called by beta diversity. And for instance, if you want to compare patient with Crohn's disease to the control, and so can you evaluate. In itself, it doesn't tell so much. And the other possibility to use the alpha diversity, how will change during the lifetime or a period of time. And maybe this overcome these problems which you just mentioned. You also proved a very strong discussion skill. Congratulations. It was very nice, and it was a very vivid discussion. So it's a little bit more than 20 minutes, but you overcome also 1 minute your presentation. So it was good. Congratulations.